Good afternoon from Brussels and welcome to this SolarPower Europe webinar, Storage Markets Across Europe, Italy. Today's webinar is the second of our webinar series on storage, who are exploring the status of solar and storage markets across Europe. This episode will look at the Italian storage market specifically and how the implementation of the clean energy package into national legislation could support the development on solar and storage. My name is Raffaele Rossi, and I work at SolarPower Europe as a policy analyst. And I'm very much looking forward to this webinar and to introducing our distinguished speakers today. But before that, we're very happy to continue this series of webinars that look at the different situations across Europe when it comes to storage markets and the policy frameworks around them. It is an exciting moment for us since the member states are now looking at the finalization of their national energy and climate plans and have to define what roles energy storage will play in the pathway towards a decarbonized economy. With the agreement over the clean energy package in early 2019, member states have now the task of implementing the legislative package into national laws. Therefore, this is the right timing for us to discuss these very relevant topics. The webinar series on storage will continue in the upcoming year with a focus on other promising markets. So please keep monitor our news on this regard because we will announce them very soon. So I'm really glad to announce our panelists today. Nathalie Rubin-Delanchy from Cambre Associate, who will be the moderator of the session today. Nathalie is an expert in energy policy and has followed the clean energy package negotiations and its transposition into key member states. So she will give us some background on the topic and then further moderate the session. We also have with us Alberto Simionato, delegate from ANIE Rinnovabili. Alberto will give us an overview of the Italian storage market and its current support schemes for solar and storage. And we'll also present a couple of very interesting pilot projects on storage services carried out by the Italian TSO Terna. And the last speaker today with us is Luigi Mazzocchi, the Director of Department Generation System at RSE, who will illustrate the provisions on clean energy package that will have an impact on the Italian storage market, and we'll discuss the barriers to their implementation. That's all from my side today. So without further ado, now I wish you a very good webinar, and I leave the floor to Nathalie to tell us more about the clean energy package provisions on storage. Please, Nathalie, the floor is yours.
Hello, so many thanks, Raffaele, for the introduction. So as mentioned, my name is Natalie Rubens, and I'm an energy expert working at Cambre Associates, which is a public policy and public relations agency based in Brussels. I've been following the clean energy package and particularly the provisions on storage ever since the package was published in 2016, so for a long time. And now we're looking at the transposition of all these provisions into national laws, including in some of the key markets across the EU. Before we kick off with the presentations from our speakers, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on how energy storage looks within the clean energy package, and then I'll let our speakers speak a bit more about the Italian context. So as you know, the clean energy package, and particularly within this, the electricity market design package, is considered as by many as revolutionary for storage because this is the very first time that the EU actually writes down in law the rules for storage operators to be part of the EU's energy system. And this ranges all the way from having for the first time a definition of storage to having some rules which will enable storage to participate in different EU electricity markets. What the text also does is to enable storage to perform under many different applications. So first of all, for customers, they now have the possibility of using batteries at home to self-consume or to produce, store and sell electricity. So for the very first time, creating a concept of active customers. And then on a wider scale, we also have system operators who are incentivized to make use of flexibility. For instance, they need to consider storage as an option instead of grid build-outs when they're establishing their network development plans. So we expect a lot of movement on this on the coming years. Importantly, the text also enables the concept of stacking, so the possibility to segment the battery's load into smaller loads in order to serve multiple markets at the same time. The transposition of the Electricity Market Design Directive, Raffaele mentioned it already, was kicked off this summer with the publication in the EU's official journal, and since then member states have begun to think about how to adapt these guidelines to their national realities, and this must be finalized by the end of 2020. So it's still at very early stages for the moment, but we are already seeing very different types of transposition emerging, and this is due to the fact that EU member states have very different starting points. So their energy profiles vary widely from one country to another. For instance, if you look at the energy storage provision specifically, as you know, energy storage can show its value primarily through having more dynamic and flexible markets in which the prices can fluctuate, so that customers can really see a business case for using a battery at home. But this would imply, of course, having market-based prices, which means you can no longer have regulated tariffs. And this has been one of the main sticking points during the discussions in Brussels over the past few years. It does involve a fundamental shift in the full way that the energy system is conceived. So we see many member states would have some difficulties in understanding how they can really make these provisions a reality in their national markets. So while the market design provisions are definitely a very good starting point, the transposition is where we're really going to be able to see how this can actually play out in practice. And unfortunately, within the text, of course, there are still a number of shortcomings that need to be addressed. So for instance, the definition of storage, while it's good that there is one for the first time, it does not actually recognize storage as a separate asset category. And this means that storage is viewed in many cases both as generation and as consumption, and then it can be taxed 2 times because of this. The EU has already started thinking about how to address these problems. So just yesterday, there was a very big stakeholder workshop organized by DG Energy on storage policy in the EU, looking at the barriers and how to overcome these. And indeed, we do expect the revision of the Energy Taxation Directive, hopefully later this year, to look at how to avoid a double taxation of storage. So at least these issues are on the table. But the problem is that by the time these policies actually become law in EU member states, it'll take another 5 or 10 years. So at the moment, it's very important that regulators get the transposition of the clean energy package right. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into Italy's status quo and looking at how these provisions on storage are adapted to the Italian market and what the current status is in Italy. And we'll be hearing from 2 speakers. So Raffaele already introduced him briefly, but we'll start with Alberto Seniorna from ANIE Rinnovabili, and he will be followed by a presentation by Luigi Mazzocchi from RSE. A few housekeeping rules before we kick off. So our 2 speakers will present for about 15 minutes each, after which we will open the floor for questions. You should see on your screen a little bar on the right-hand side in which you can type the questions to the speakers, and I'll pick these up once we address the Q&A. I would ask you to try and be as clear as possible in your questions, of course, since they're in written formats, and to avoid acronyms and be detailed so that we can get the best answers to you possible. So without any further ado, I'm very happy to pass the floor to today's first speaker, Alberto Seniorna.
Okay. Do you listen me?
Yep, we can hear you very well.
Okay. So thank you very much. My name is Alberto Seniorna, and as a member of ANIE Rinnovabili, the Italian Association for the companies who are working in the renewables, I'm going to present you an overview of the PV system before and later also storage system in Italian market. Okay. So first of all, I want to introduce you from where I've taken the data of the chart I will show you in the next slides. All the data I will show you are taken by a portal, the portal of TSO, the Transmission Service Operator in Italy, Terna, and the portal is called Gaudi. So these are the official data where is written all the generators are connected to the grid not only renewables, but also energy storage system and etc. So this is the official data. I want to start with some numbers, some figures in PV systems. In this slide, there's a chart about how many megawatts were connected in the past quarters from 2016. You can see the growth quarter by quarter of the connected power, and also if there are some columns very higher than the others, probably because some connection of multi-megawatt plants. There is in average a growth quarter by quarter, and we can summarize the growth in about 10% every year. So every year there is 10% more power connected to the grid, and in fact probably also this year we will close with something less of 500 megawatts power connected. We expected more increase next year. Here there is another detail in power connections of the PV systems. It's only to show you how it's the increase I just told you is real. Probably this year in 2019 we will close with 500 megawatts. The next chart, this chart is very interested because this chart can better understand, can make you better understand how the market is divided in different segments, in residential, commercial, and the utility scale segments. So if you consider the chart on the left, you can have an overview of what power there is for each segment connected this year in 2019. About 60% of the power, connected power of PV plants is for commercial and utility scale plants. But if you consider the chart in the right, you can see how many plants are connected for residential segment for a peak power lower than 10 kilowatt power. Are about 90% of the plants every year connected lower than 10 kilowatt power, and I think this is a very important data for the ESS market, because as we will see in other slides, the residential market is the most important for the ESS diffusion now. Totally, year by year, are installed more or less now in Italy 40,000 PV plants every year, and the accumulated connections of residential plants probably is reaching the 600,000 PV plants. This is mainly because an incentive program started from 2009-2015. The incentive program was called Conto Energia, and it helped a lot for the diffusion of PV plants of all the size, but especially for PV size it was a good help. So also because a lot of PV plants installed of a residential size, the Italian market is very attractive now for the ESS diffusion. Okay, so now we can move to the data of storage systems. Really, the TSO started only 1 year ago to register all the data of ESS connection to the grid. So unfortunately, the data are not so updated. And unfortunately also before 2017-2016, there weren't complete regulations about the connection for ESS systems to the grid. So there are many ESS systems installed without any kind of regulation and registration in this portal or in the portal of DSO. There is a Now we'll show you a forecast of the market of ESS systems made by ANIE and the real data of this portal, Gaudi. And you will see that there is a big gap between the two datas. And the reason is, as I said before, unfortunately, before 2070, a lot of systems were connected without any registration, but also because the registration to TSO portal could take also more than 6 months from the installation date. And it's depending on the installer, unfortunately. Sometimes installer wait months before the registration of the plant into Gaudi, and this is highlighted from the gap we will see in the data. This is our forecast. The forecast started in 2015 with the 2,000 pieces of ESS sold, and later there is an increase of the ESS sales of 20–30% year by year, with a big step in from 2015 to 2016, and we think the accumulated pieces of ESS system sold and installed in Italy now is about 26,000 pieces. And this is the real number, not so real, but the number of how many ESS are registered in the Gaudi, in the TSO portal. You can see here is written that before this year, so before 2018, there are only 5,500 more or less systems installed instead of 26,000 that we forecasted. So there is a gap of 10,000 pieces. And as I mentioned you before, the reasons are different. I also don't exclude that there are many systems not registered in this portal. Okay, and in this slide now we have an analysis about what is connected to the grid, what is declared and registered in the TSO portal. Sorry. So we can better understand how is composed the market of ESS in Italy, and how is the more common installation of ESS system inside the PV plant. So in the higher part of this slide, you can see the chart of the size of the ESS storage installed and registered in this portal. So 99% of all the ESS registered has a capacity lower than 20 kilowatt per hour of capacity. So it's a clear signal that the market is especially the residential one, not yet the commercial or the utility scale market. In the lower part of the slide, there is another interesting analysis, and it is it talks about where is connected the ESS. For the 60% more or less of the plant registered in Gaudi, there is an installation of ESS in DC side, so between the modules and the PV inverter. Really probably because, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of systems installed before 2017 not registered in Gaudi. The real data could be 50% of installation in DC side and 50% of installation AC side, and this is because there is a lot of old PV plant installed with the incentive program of Conto Energia that probably now has installed also an ESS system in AC side but not registered yet. Okay, This slide is only to show you how is the numbers of the installation of PV system for the region by region. We want only to underline that there is Lombardy and Veneto that has the higher numbers. And this is not only because they are in the north of Italy, probably where there is more also PV installation in residential segment, but also because in Lombardy, especially, there was an incentive program started in 2016, and this incentive program helped too much to increase the numbers of ESS system installed. We wanted also to underline the numbers of Veneto, because Veneto started also with an incentive program this year. Probably the number are not affected yet by this kind of incentive program, because it was ended at the end of this year, and it started at the half of this year. But it's very important numbers for Veneto, because probably will increase very much in the next year. So what is supporting the PV and the ESS market in Italy? We wanted to start with the more common support, that is the self-consumption, for sure, I think, as in all other countries. And we wanted to show an example of what is the money saved of a typical residential customer with the PV system installed, or a storage plus PV system installed in his house. For a residential customer, a PV plant can reduce the yearly consumption of the house of about 30%. If there is also an ESS system installed together with PV system, probably this percentage can reach the 75–80%. So it is a good value for to give a support, to give an help for the installation of this kind of system. There is also another kind of support for PV and ES, for PV more than ESCs, and later I will say you why only for PV. And it is the net metering. Net metering is in Italia is called scambio sul posto. Really, it's not a real net metering. It is a sort of economic refund of all the energy injected into the grid from renewables. And this refund covers the energy cost plus a percentage of all the charges, transportation, measurement, etc., and all the other duties of the energy bill. So it's not one-to-one net metering, but it's more or less 1 to 0.6 more or less exchange with the grid, net metering with the grid. But it could be a good support for PV installation. In fact, in the lower part of the table, we expected a money save for a typical residential customer with 3,000 kilowatt per hour year of consumption of more than 400 euro. With the storage system, this save could be also of more than 500 euros, but could be more if net metering, scambio sul posto, our net metering will finish. So net metering is a support for PV, probably is not a support, but it is a barrier for storage diffusion. Other supporting schemes for PV and ESS, for sure, probably the most important support is the 50% of rebate in tax credit in 10 years. Probably it's more simple if I make you an example of how it works. If you have spent this year 10,000 euro for a PV plant, for the next 10 years you can pay 500 euro per year less of taxes. So basically, after 10 years, we have paid the plant the 50% of the initial value. This is how it works, the 50% of rebate in tax credit for privates, only for residential systems. For companies, there is the 150% of tax deduction in 5 years. It's called superammortamento. There are also some incentive schemes. There are auction started this year for big power plants. And but I don't want to spend too much words for this kind of auction, because ESS systems are not involved. But the real incentive for ESS is the regional incentive schemes. Regional incentive schemes started with Lombardy and Veneto, as I just said you before. We as ANIE are having some meetings, and also had meetings last year with the administration of the different region. The region you can see here in the picture in yellow, already in yellow, to make that this kind of incentive scheme start also in that regions, but we will see, we don't know. I don't want to spend words about this thing, because it's only some simplification in the bureaucracy, in the authorization of I mean Modello Unico, the authorization of the installation PV and the ESS systems. So I go over, next slide, because I want to spend some more words in barriers. Barriers, probably. Yes.
Sorry, this is Natalie. Just to let you know, you've got just a couple of minutes left, if that's okay for you too.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will be very fast in barriers. Barriers, unfortunately, the 50% of tax rebate I just said you before is confirmed year by year, so it's not a long view for companies, but year by year we have to wait always the confirmation of this kind of support. There is a problem with this kind of tax rebate in ESS, because the tax agency in Italy said in May that it's not anymore possible for the installation of ESS in incentive PV plants, but it seems that next year this thing will be removed, this stop will be removed. And there is the tax reduction also for the companies, the tax reduction of 150% always confirmed year by year. Generally, there is the bureaucracy that is stopping the diffusion of the system. About net metering, we have just talked before. So at the end of the presentation, I would like to introduce you to experimental project. The TSO is starting in Italy, and probably the first one, the UVAM, UVAM, and it's mean aggregated units, virtual units mixed with different kind of units. This kind of experimental project started this year, and this project is going to give the possibility to the small units, PV system, ESS storage, and so on, to take part to dispatching services for the TSO. So probably this kind of possibility will give to the renewable the possibility to increase too much for the next years. Now it's only experimental project, but we hope that will be fixed in the next year, and it will take part for the economics of the PV plants. How it works? Probably next relator will give you more details in how it works, so I don't want to spend too much words about this thing. I want only to summarize more or less what is the problems for this kind of experimentation for the smaller units. The barrier is in this case that the small units has not the right measurement chain, measurement meter also to participate to this kind of experimentation. So we are waiting next year, or I hope at the end of this year, a sort of derogation from authority, from Terna, for the participation of also all the small units to this experimentation of UVAM. Remuneration, and later I will end. Remuneration are divided in the fixed remuneration, fixed revenues for the qualification of the UVAM, the qualification so of this aggregation of units. There is this fixed compensation, and if you make, you have to make your offer after the qualification. There is a 6 auction every day for the participation of the market of dispatchment, and if you win the auction, you will be paid as bid for the energy you can give to the grid for the balancing. So I think I can stop here. No, sorry. There is also the last slide about UVAS, the other project. Unfortunately, UVAS is especially for big plants, big storage plant, 5 megawatt, it seems by now. So it's not something we will see in the next year or very soon, but in the future. It's probably something we will use in 2022 or 2025. I only want to finish with some figures about the national energy and climate plans. In these plans, probably we will have in next 10 years 30 gigawatt of new photovoltaic plants connected, and 4,500 megawatt of distributed battery storage, so ESS storage installed in Italy. The next chart and the last one is about the energy, the prediction of national energy and climate plans about the energy produced by photovoltaic. We will increase the energy produced by photovoltaic from 16 terawatt-hour to 75, more or less, 75 within next 10 years. And also the numbers for storage is amazing, because from 0. Something else of this year, we will move to 15 gigawatt-hour per hour of storage system installed in Italy. So I think are very, very good, and hopefully we will reach these goals, and it will be very, very important for us. So I've finished my presentation, and I give the floor to the next relator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alberto. It was a very good scene setter, and we can now move on to the presentation by Luigi, who's going to go into a bit more detail about the legal context. And just to specify, before I put Luigi on the line, that of course we will circulate the slides after the presentations, as well as a recording of the webinar in case you need any more details. Over to you, Luigi. If we can finish at 10:02, that would be fantastic.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have the control of the slides? Thank you. Okay, this is just a summary. I will show you some items, some subjects which are related in the European directives that are relevant for PV and storage penetration. And for each of these items, we will discuss what is the effect on PV and on storage development, what is the present status in Italy, because we have already some regulation which are in this direction, and what are the remaining barriers to be solved. So the first point is about demand and storage participation to the market. We see some ideas from the regulation, from the directive. These are 100 pages, but I try to catch the most important messages. So, for example, the regulation 943 says that the sustainable generation, that means also from renewables, from small generation plants, energy storage, and demand response shall participate on equal footing in the market. Let's say the regulation should be neutral versus the kind of technology, kind of equipment we use. And also there is the definition in the Directive 944 of the active customer as a final customer who consumes or stores electricity generated. So it can be an active subject in the system. It can generate, can store, and can use the energy, and should be able to sell the electricity or participate in other markets like flexibility, energy efficiency. So this provision enables storage system owned by end user to participate in flexibility services. This is important. And second, we say that this will provide some more attractiveness also for PV installation, because the integrated PV and storage system plant will have more opportunities to not only to satisfy the needs of the user, but also to participate to possible revenues from the services. So the present situation is this part in green is our authority in 2017 provided the possibility also for small medium customer to participate to ancillary services market. And in addition, we have introduced this year, this summer, the capacity market. And this includes also the possibility to for storage system to contribute to power system adequacy and flexibility. So what are the remaining barriers? Okay, the UVAM, this is the mechanism that was mentioned by the previous speaker. As a minimum size, each aggregation should be at least 1 megawatt, not in terms of generic power, but in controllable power. So this is the difference, the algebraic difference between the maximum input to the network and the maximum negative energy taken from the network. And this limit is really low. Until last year, the limit to participate to the market was 10 megawatt. But according to the regulation, it should decrease also to 500 kilowatt. So this is a next step to be done. And the big limitation for storage is that if you are a final customer, you pay in the energy taken from the network full rate, including incentives for renewables, including network charges. But this is a big limitation for storage, because the storage should be able to negotiate the energy taken and given back to the network on the same basis, according to the real energy price and not to the tariff. So this barrier, fortunately, is going to be removed. There has been a consultation, and in a few 1 or 2 months, we'll have a new regulation that will take away this kind of barrier, because the energy used by the battery to provide services, so for example, upward and downward regulation and so on, will be exempt from taxes and levies. Okay, another important point is aggregation. So this is defined by the directive as a function performed by someone who combines multiple loads or electricity produced by multiple customers, and this should be able to participate to energy markets. And also the directive states that this shall ensure that renewable self-consumers, so they can operate as individuals or as aggregation, they can generate renewable and store it and sell the excess production. So what is important is that also a small customer, a small producer below the threshold, which now is 1 megawatt, can participate to the market. In that case, he cannot participate as an individual, but participate as part of an aggregation. And so this is obviously an advantage for a final customer, and the possibility to have these additional opportunities with self-production and storage to participate to the market will provide more attractiveness to install PV and especially to install storage system. The present situation, I already mentioned the deliberation of the authority in 2017, and this provides the aggregation possibility. And the capacity market also includes the possibility to participate for batteries. And there is a cap on the price, but this is normal. There are still some barriers which are really important. So besides the size, okay, the problem of the price of the tariff, it will be removed. The problem of the measurements, it was mentioned before by my colleague. Small customer below 55 kilowatts have not available at now the so-called hourly measurements, let's say quasi real-time measurements, which are requested by the TSO to enable them to participate to an aggregation, unless they have the second generation meters. But this is a situation which is changing. We have now about 20% of customers equipped with second generation. And there should be also the possibility to use their own meter from the customer, from the aggregator, but this has not been accepted up to now. This should be accepted by the TSO in a few months. Another barrier is that to participate to an aggregation, to establish an aggregation, the aggregator should have the permission from the DSO, of all the DSO which are involved in this aggregation, and also from the BRP, balance responsible party. They normally don't put any limit, but in principle they could stop for their own reason to allow this aggregation. This should be overcome because the Italian authority is preparing a new regulation, a completely new regulation for the ancillary market, and in that case this barrier will be removed. There will be no necessity to have this consensus. And another point which is really important, in my opinion, is that there is no mandatory standard for communication. So if you are an aggregator and you want to aggregate a number of small customers, each of them may have a battery, may have a PV plant and so on, you have not only to measure the flow, the energy flow, but you have also to put a command to control the flow. So you have to interact with, for example, the battery inverter. And as you have seen, for example, in Lombardy, there are initiatives underway to aggregate batteries, but you see that there are 10 or 20 different types of inverters. Each of them has its own protocols, so it becomes complicated to aggregate for this reason. Smart meters, I mentioned before, the first generation, second generation is obviously an important subject also for PV and especially for storage. The Directive 944 states that there should be smart metering systems, and specifically finalized to enable active participation of customers. So to have quasi real-time measurements, and we should have interoperability. So that means that it's possible to communicate with the meters to make elaboration, to make any kind of control. And also there is the possibility to use non-validated data, because if the smart meter infrastructure is not available, the customer could install a specific meter which is not managed by the DSO, but should be accepted as a valid measurement for this purpose. So these are very important. told before, if you want to aggregate small customers to participate to the, for example, flexibility ancillary market, ancillary service market, it is necessary to have monitoring and to have control of all this distributed equipment. And smart meters are a good facilitator for this. Now in Italy, there are nearly all customers have smart meters. That means that it's not necessary to read physically each meter, but there is a automatic transmission, but it is enough just for the billing, because you have a measurement with low frequency. It's not possible to use it for real-time data. And now there is second generation meters, which has a much better, much bigger capability to transfer quickly data, which is underway. And but the completion of this deployment of the second generation smart meters is underway, and the completion will be accomplished probably in 2 years, I don't know. So non-fiscal meter mentioned by the directive at the moment are not accepted by the TSO. So I told already this point. Multiple services. Okay, this is a good point for storage system. The directive says that member state shall ensure that active customer having available a storage facility are allowed to provide several services simultaneously. And this is important opportunity, because as we know, the cost of the storage system are not so low. So if you want to have a good revenue from this investment, it is better to provide multiple services. In this way, you can combine benefits and have a good return. And also, this is good for PV, because PV and storage system are an integrated solution that is in some way better than only PV, and the possibility to provide services, of course, is favorable. The problem is now that we have a barrier, the so-called UVAM, the aggregation, are limited to services, to some specific services, not all services, some specific services for the TSO. And for example, there is no provision to provide service for the DSO. That is another opportunity, very important, because DSO may manage a new connection, increasing power request, new power generation in the distribution network in 2 ways. They can invest to enhance the transport capability, to increase the power of the transformers and so on, but it's expensive. Or they can have an active management of the customer. But this active management is not regulated now. However, this subject is underway, so we are starting to speak about some pilot projects where DSO will be made able to contract with active customer or aggregation of active customer the services they need, for example, for congestion management, for voltage control. Okay, I think the last important point is energy communities. This is widely mentioned both in the market directive and in the so-called RED II, the Renewable Energy Directive, and in different ways. But in any case, they express the idea that there should be possibility for the community, that means a number, multiple users that may be passive or active users, to exchange energy and to gain a benefit from this exchange. So in some way, this community can be seen as a larger, let's say, virtual user that may have the same or similar benefit as we have for a single user that makes self-production, self-consumption. That means that this single user doesn't pay the cost of the network services and other levies we have in Italy on the energy they use directly from their production. But they pay also only the energy taken from the network. If this is more general, is able to include a multiple number of users and producers, this will provide more opportunities for renewables, because you may have some scale economies. For example, if you have a multiple housing building, you may have just one large, relatively large PV plant, and this will cost proportionally less than many small individual PV plants. But is also very important for storage, because if we incentivize not only the single user self-consumption, but also the collective self-consumption that may be in a building or in a village or in an industrial area, there will be more interest to install a storage system for this community that will optimize, will increase the self-consumption possibility. Okay, what is the present situation? This is a relatively new situation. The directive should be, of course, implemented in each member state. We are starting the process of implementation of the directive. And at the moment, only some regions in the north have provided some regional laws that cannot anticipate, let's say, the state and national regulation, but they provide some help, some limited help to start creating these communities. But this is just the first step. So, as a matter of fact, now we have no regulation of emergency community. Self-consumption is a matter of single meters, single users, point of connection, and the only possibility is one-to-one scheme. That it is allowed to have just one producer, which is only a producer, not a self-producer, but a producer, that can be also different from the user, but can be connected to a single user. So it's one-to-one, you call it SEU, that means user efficient system. And this is the only possibility up to now.
Luigi, this is Natalie again, just to say we need to wrap it up in 1 minute if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have nearly finished. And this regulation should be decided, we expect also in a relatively short time, maybe next year. Just a little discussion, but it will be very quick, about what is the best model for storage. One can discuss about distributed storage or centralized storage. Our national energy environment climate plan plans to have a big increase, as the previous speaker showed, a big increase of energy storage system in the Italian system. And this is both of the type of distributed storage and centralized storage. We have performed studies about cost benefit, about revenues from storage system, and we have evaluated that both model can be effective. So both the end user and a commercial operator could provide the service to the system in a reasonably economic way. Looking at the present trend, I would say that the first model, distributed storage model, seems to have a quicker penetration, as was shown by the figures presented by the previous speaker. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Luigi and Alberto, for your presentations. They were very helpful, very complimentary. We have just 5 minutes to go over some of the questions that were asked by the participants. And again, if anyone on the line wants to ask questions, you can do it in the little box on the right hand of your screen. So maybe I'll pick up the conversation with the first question we got, which is more based on battery technology. So one of the participants is wondering if you think that flow batteries could be a serious contender to lithium batteries, and if so, which markets could flow batteries be more competitive on?
Okay, here is Alberto. Probably it's a very technical question, and probably the other relator, Luigi Mazzocchi, could help me to give an answer. But I think now, in this moment, the lithium battery is the one more efficient for costs and for performance to be immediately sell into the market. And the flow technology could be something probably will arrive in the future, not for residential market as now we are working with, but for commercial size of the ESS systems and the industrial one. So I don't know by now if this can be the answer that the attendees were asking, but this is from my point of view the right one.
Yes, I totally agree. I would say also that flow batteries in principle have some advantages for large capacity storage system, so it depends on the application. But what is evident from the data is that this technology has not up to now reached significant commercial diffusion, but I expect that for some kind of application they will be interesting. I would mention also high temperature batteries like sodium sulfur or so-called Zebra technology that could be suitable for some application, always in the field of relatively large storage system where a large capacity is needed.
Okay, thanks very much to both of you. A second question, which is slightly outside of the scope of the Market Design Directive, but still concerning storage. So in the context of the Italian discussions, have there been discussions on using batteries on wheels, so the vehicle to grid technology discussions? And do you think this will be dealt with also in the upcoming legislative texts that are being published?
I can try to answer. I'm Luigi Mazzocchi. Yes, this is another interesting opportunity for the future. Let's say up to now there is not a large number of electric cars in Italy, but they are significantly increasing. And there is also attention from the legislator. There is already a law that states that this kind of use, so-called vehicle-to-grid service, should be favored, should be incentivized. And we know that there is a decree which is under discussion to regulate in a favorable way the participation of electric cars to the service to the network.
Thanks a lot for that, Luigi. Maybe a question on the more legislative implementation from my side. So what do you foresee as the main hurdles that could come up in the transposition of the storage provisions for market design? We spoke a lot about the barriers that already exist. What do you think will be the main hurdles that will emerge?
Okay, we have discussed the different barriers. Let's say the point is we have to change a lot our vision of the system, in the sense that now we have a strongly centralized system with a TSO which has the full responsibility and management of the power system, quality, stability, safety, and so on. And they are used to manage big blocks, let's say from large plants, from hydro plants, large hydro, or fossil fired like combined cycle, coal. And in principle, it's already possible for small generation and small storage to participate to energy markets, but it's still a little complicated, and the use of these resources is not yet so effective. So I think there is something to in terms of regulation I mentioned the new reform of the ancillary market, and this will be a big step in terms of neutrality, in terms of size, in terms of technology, in terms of consumers versus producers versus storage. But the way also in technical terms to manage correctly, effectively this new resources is not so quick, so easy. So I expect that we need some more years to have a really integrated and to the recognition and the practical actuation of the active consumer's role is not so easy. Of course, digitalization, everything about software and so on will help a lot, but it is not just a matter of regulation. It just also is a matter also of know-how, of acquisition of experience for this new vision of the system.
Yes, indeed, we do need a bit of it's the case in many member states that the market reality is trying now to catch up to the regulations. So it'll be very interesting times ahead. I was wondering just before we wrap it up, if Alberto had any final comments to make, and then we can cut as we've run out of time.
No, I don't have any other thing to add. I can only say that the most interested thing is that Italy, probably because the grid regulation is one of the more how can I say, more smart, okay, in regulation of the grid, is giving us the opportunity to start with some experimentation with TSO, and we have many associated in our association that are starting this experimentation with the TSO with a lot of good result. So I think if it is only experimentation, but it could give us the opportunity to make the difference as Italy for the renewables.
Yes, from my side, Luigi, I would put some optimistic statement at the end. Let's say I see that we have big opportunities coming from distributed generation, also electrical vehicles. So we have resources which are increasing and becoming important in terms of power, in terms of capacity. And this will be very important, very useful for the evolution, because we are planning, as it was shown by my colleague Alberto, a big increase of stochastic renewables, and we need flexibility. And we have we are on the right way. Let's say the increase of distributed storage and electrical mobility and distributed generation and so on are the strong resources that we'll have in 5 years, 10 years to manage the new system. And what is important, we see that also the end customer are starting to be interested, to be also enthusiastic in some way to be involved. Of course, this is not a mass phenomenon now, is a phenomenon limited to some fraction of the population, but there are people that are interested to also to make experiment, to be involved. So I think this will help a lot to reach our goals in terms of environment, in terms of renewals.
Thanks a lot. This is a very positive note to end on. So I will just wrap it up here. Say thank you to our speakers for speaking. Thank you to our participants for participating. And remind you that we will circulate a recording of the webinar along with the PowerPoint presentations that were used just after the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.